Before we begin, thank you very much to Brentus Simardicus for joining the Patreon campaign. I know that name. I've read that one before. Thank you very much for supporting once again. Always a weird one to say. I have to read it like 2 or 3 times to make sure I'm pronouncing it correctly. So, just before we get into the video, I do need to do my due diligence for my sponsors over at Entertainment Earth and let you guys know that right now there's a bunch of Transformers on sale and an extra 10% off if you shop within the next week. So, there's a link in the description below to do your shopping at Entertainment Earth. I appreciate you clicking on that. The little like code TJOmega, that don't work no more. They want you to use the link, so please use the link below. Sends you right to the Transformer section. I know what you guys want. I know what you're here for. Okay. Sponsor shilling out of the way. Let's talk about toys. Today, I wanted to take a history tour around one of the most unsung of the size classes, but also one of the longest enduring size classes in Transformers. Probably second only to the Deluxe and the Voyager, at least in its pure incarnation. The Legend class toys were something that probably should not have gone very far, but ended up being a staple of just about every Transformer line through the late 2000s and early 2010s. And it gave us a lot of really fun, interesting toys at very, very cheap prices. So we're going to take a look at a bunch of them today as we go through this history and all the different milestones we hit along the way. So this starts in Transformers Cybertron, where most good Transformer things start. Except back then, they were just small-scale Cybertron figures. They weren't given any particular name or branding. We only found out they were called Legends of Cybertron because of computer and Walmart listings, etc. Just having it there as part of the listing. It was never on the box. But hey, we knew it. We were clever boys and girls. We knew how to find this stuff. So it just kind of stuck. Like, even though it didn't really like go on the box anywhere, we just kind of knew these were Legends class toys. And it starts off in a really interesting thing. It is a small $5 figure that basically covered the major characters of Transformers Cybertron. And in a small, affordable price point where everyone was kind of the same size. If you kind of look at what they do with kids, like cartoon-based deluxe lines, where every character gets to be a deluxe, same concept. You know, one size class to rule them all. But we got these very simple figures of some of the most iconic characters in Transformers Cybertron. Makes sense. Legends of Cybertron. We got so many uses out of these molds. This is where I got the one time that beautiful Starscream from Cybertron got done up in Skywarp colors, and it pains me to this day that they canceled the one we were going to get from the new mold. Never going to get the things I want. Unless a friend of mine repaints them. Thank you very much, Grimlockamus. But that said, these things were done up in droves. Multi-packs, additional figures with larger ones, and they just kept coming. When we got into classics, they took a lot of the Cybertron ones and did a lot of funky repaints to get them to look like G1 characters. And it's kind of cool. Hey, here's a Trypticon with a robot mode, but it's also kind of hysterical to see Perceptor as a missile truck, just because both toys happen to have a cannon on their shoulders. But those are just the amusing things, right? I love the era of, like, we're just going to take whatever mold we have and just paint it into this character and hope for the best. I kind of miss it. It was also the first time we ever got a Leo Prime in the US. Like what would eventually become, like, the standard for Leo Prime. Oh, and it was the first time we actually got to see Bumblebee looking like this. So, when Classics Legends happened, we just kind of looked at this and went, okay, it's another Bumblebee toy. They just got the trademark for that name back. So clearly they're just putting a few more toys on the shelves in order to pad things out. It's a weird full circle moment, as the character originally designed to be the stand-in for Bumblebee got repainted into Bumblebee. But it's also a forebearer for what Bumblebee would become. Not the cutesy, dumpy little scout that's trying to impress Optimus Prime, but one of the foremost warriors on the Autobot side of the battlefield. This is kind of the first time we got a glimpse of that, even if it was by accident. Not accidental when we move into the movie toys. The toys do so well, hey, let's just keep it rolling. So, tons of new molds coming out for the movie lines. And again, these got used a ton. Literally any way they could figure out how to multi-pack these things, they did. So many of the movie legends were released in so many ways. There were 2-packs, there were 4-packs, 5-packs. There was a pack that showed Cybertron, Optimus, and Megatron beside movie Optimus and Megatron, as if they were somehow, like, bonded to each other. If it was a G1 Megatron, I'd get it, but it's orange, purple, and gray Cybertron Megatron. It didn't work. It didn't really work. The noteworthy thing about the original 07 line, however, is the fact that it's the one that had the closest to a movie screen-accurate Megatron there was, all the way up until, like, Masterpiece and Studio Series finally solved the problem. I mean, look at it. There's barely any kibble. The jet mode is basically what it was in the movie, without any underbulk under the wings. And it's also the only Megatron that has the original head before they had to change it due to fan backlash. It's a weird little piece of history, but there you go. Yeah, but, you know, this is also the one that gave us that, like, big Dorito Starscream. So, I can't give that line too much credit. Most of these Legends lines, give and take. Once the movie was done, or at least once the main bulk of the movie was done, Hasbro decided, hey, let's do the classics again, but this time we'll do it as a second toy line so we can run both at the same time. And that's how we get into the universe section of the legacy of Legends. Again, Cybertron figures with G1 repaints, and they were getting weirder and weirder. You could tell how hard they were trying to crowbar these homages in, just for the sake of reusing molds and not having to do more work. But they eventually have to cave. Eventually, we need to do new molds if we're going to do this in a G1 branded line. So in come our brand new G1ified Legend scale characters. And to be fair, most of them do a pretty good job. Like, there's a lot of really fun figures at that size. And it's one of the first times where we had an active attempt to get all the mini bots back out. Most of them did come out in that Legend scale. Oh, and this is also the first time they tried to recreate the G2 Megatron, and the last time they tried to recreate G2 Megatron. It's kind of embarrassing that such an iconic Megatron for so many 90s kids has gotten zero toy representation outside of purple and green repaints of random Megatron toys. It's a weird omission. It's a really weird, like, missing gap in Transformers, but there you go. But moving on from there, Universe was also nice enough to give us the animated Legends scale. Animated was supposed to have its own Legends class, but for whatever reason, that got truncated. At the time, they were worried about toy lines kind of eating each other if they released too many toys at the same price point. So they were very cognizant of toys that kind of clashed with their other plans. So the Universe line ended up getting, the animated line getting sent into the Universe line instead. Still neat little figures. And I would be remiss to mention, if I did not mention, that Universe is where we finally got a Cosmos to actually come out and not kill a line. Took a long time. It's hard to believe that this was a Classics Cosmos that became a Titanium Cosmos that became a Legends Cosmos. They were trying so hard. This is also where they start getting ambitious. We had our first combiner amongst the Legends class toys. When they started doing them again for Revenge of the Fallen, they made sure that the Jetfire could combine with the Optimus Prime. Clearly not as intricate as the larger figures could do, since it's just, you know, Jetfire plugging onto his back. But give them credit, you know, they actually figured out the engineering for this. So it's a it's a novel attempt. It did make them feel a little bit more special. If we jump back over to the universe, so the movie line continues just as the previous movie line did. Tons of repaints, tons of reuses from the previous lines, new pieces when necessary, and those new pieces also got remolds and retools forever. But Universe decided to go back to do Legends class kind of the way it was originally intended. So, for the very first time, G1 Optimus Prime graces this Legends class. This starts coming in Reveal the Shield. As you can see, he actually has a rub symbol. And this was actually a really clever stage of engineering. At this point, designers were so comfortable in the Legends budget, they actually figured out a lot of really clever toys at this scale. This Optimus Prime is a really good rendition of G1 Optimus Prime, even in this tiny little size. More impressive to me was the Starscream, who actually used the kibble from the vehicle mode transformation to replicate the null rays on the arms. That's an incredibly clever little detail. You know, I actually really liked this toy. I thought this was really clever. And of course, appropriate for this scale, is the last time we have seen a proper gun mode Megatron as well. Even this tiny little gun needed that orange cap on the tip. It's hilarious in its own way. So that's two different Megatrons that were last seen at this size class. 3 Megatrons done properly in this size class exclusively. It's a very weird line if you are a Megatron. So, Legends themselves continue on through Reveal the Shield. They're done up as Generations toys. However, eventually it does trail off. The last time we got to see things in this proper original Legends style was with the GDO line. Now, the GDO line was, again, just a few repaints of existing figures. However, they actually did the thing that, to this point, was kind of unheard of, and actually gave weapon accessories to these Legends class toys, which was nice to see. You know, at least we have a little bit of accessory play finally. It was when the line died, but at least it had something. Now, Hasbro would continue to milk those Legends molds, especially those later G1s, for a while longer. Usually a lot of budget stores, like your Five Belows, your Dollar Generals, etc., would typically get figures like that in. And funny enough, the ones that were like Optimus, Starscream, the ones that were reused in GDO would actually have the GDO exclusive weapons along with them. So if you wanted a Starscream with 4 null rays, that was on the market for a while. But this isn't where Legends ended. In fact, we kind of just shifted. So Legends became Legion class for the Dark of the Moon toy line. It was the exact same toy. It is literally the exact same toy, except this time they expanded it. Now we had the Cyberverse. And no, this is not the 2018 cartoon. The Cyberverse was a toy line within a toy line. It was a small scale and a larger Commander scale that represented the larger characters in the story. So essentially you got a mini version of the toy line where there was a vague sense of scale across all the characters. So this was a cheap way for kids to be able to afford all the characters from the movie, but also for collectors to have entire armies, legions of characters on a single shelf. I thought it was pretty brilliant. I thought this was a fantastic idea. You know, and it worked out for them too. It solved a big problem Transformers always had, which was the play set. 80s and 90s toys were almost defined by the play sets and vehicles that you could buy with them, but Transformers couldn't do that. In order to make a play set, you had to make a Metroplex, a Fort Max, and not every kid could afford a Fort Max. So it made it a little bit difficult to work in a traditional play style into a popular boys line. This solved it. Not only did we get smaller play sets that interacted with the figures, but also grand scale ones as well. It produced its own like little microcosm within the Transformer toy line, and I thought it was a really smart idea. It was such a good idea that continued it for the Transformers Prime line, and now we got accessories back again. Granted, a lot of them were generic, A lot of people ended up with the same red sword or the same purple gun, both of which could double as optional weapons. A lot of these had like 2 handles on them in case you wanted to beat someone with your rifle or shoot your sword. Whatever. I'm not going to judge. Point being, they all finally came with accessories. Granted, translucent red, purple, or green accessories that were super soft, but it's accessories. And beyond that, just kind of continued the same thing that Legends and Legions had always done, be a small, affordable alternative to the larger toys. It was the only place you could get a breakdown in America until they finally released the Japanese version as a Hasbro Pulse exclusive. And that took forever to happen. That was a 15th anniversary piece, if I remember right. Took a hot minute. But we also had things like this. The Cliff Jumper that came out in Transformers Prime's Legion class, I will say, is the best toy that ever came out in that size class. This guy was packing 11 points of articulation, which is unheard of considering, like, some of these in this line topped out at 4. They were not supposed to be articulated, but through whatever engineering his transformation required, Cliff Jumper managed it. And a lot of it's ball joint too, so it's like full range motion. It's a fantastic piece. It's also the only time you can get a hard shell, which is, again, considering you had a whole episode devoted to him, feels weird. Later on, when we went into Predacons Rising, they got ambitious. Legions had a combiner all of a sudden, and that was cool in itself. But yeah, like, that pretty much is like the pinnacle of what the Legions class ever did. Oh, and they also gave us this thing as the big playset figure for all your Legions classes. I hated this thing. It's just a big hollow frame of a character who doesn't have a whole lot of play value or functionality to him. It's silly. It's silly. Now, again, this Legion class would trail off. This is pretty much where this size, in and of itself, finally ends. You would see a retool of Abominus eventually make its way to the Last Night toy line, but almost as an incidental piece rather than a proper continuation of the Legends or Legion toy line. Traditionally, this is where it ends, but the name Legends comes back as a brand new line that kind of fits into the same slot. Originally, it starts as 2 packs of these data discs, which were meant to go with the Fall of Cybertron, Blaster, and Soundwave. You eject them out from the chest, they hit the ground, they flip out into whatever beast mode that they were supposed to have, or robot mode. If it sounds like Transformers was trying to ape Bakugan, congratulations, you're paying attention. But that's only for one short generations line. It continues on into the future ones. And that gives us things like a small-scale Optimus Prime. Now, in order to adapt the size class, to give you the same amount of figure for the $10 they wanted for the 2-pack of disc bots, now we had a small-scale figure, which was more in line with more almost like the Scout class or the basic class toys we had before, but now we have a smaller figure included with them that transforms into their own little vehicle and a weapon, kind of like an advanced Target Master. We've seen Hasbro do things like this in the past because this is how they prepare something to get budgeted down. They include that little bit of bonus that will eventually be taken away. But for the moment, this actually worked out pretty well. So you move on with this is the line that finally gave us a full set of modern Insecticons. Now, it took multiple iterations of this line, but they did finally make it out. Oh, and hey, Reflector got a toy. It's just a tiny little accessory figure, but at this point, I'll take anything for the guy. It's also where IDW finally got a little bit of love at the toy aisle. You saw Optimus was more along the lines of an IDW design. Well, so is this Swerve. And the tailgate was too. So some of your favorites actually got some good representation. This is the size scale, by the way, that I thought was perfect for mini-bots, and I really wish that they had continued it till everyone got one, but is what it is. By the time we got along to later lines like tight, like things like Combiner Wars. All of those little accessory figures trailed off, and now for $10, you just got a solid Transformer. That's pretty much what it came down to. But it still acted as something that was very necessary at the time, which was an entry point into the line. $20 is a lot of money to ask for a kid who just scraping by on normal allowance. So when you have a $20 deluxe that they may or may not like, it might put them off from the toy line. But a $10 risk on a smaller figure, okay, we can go with that. And it helps that most of them were actually pretty solid figures. Now, we do end up with the same issue of some of them are meant to work with others, so they don't really make for great toys on their own. This toy line is what started off the Data Slugs, which would be for the eventual Titans Return, Blaster, and Soundwave. They were weird. But again, it's a size class that allows them to get it out. It always seems like so many of the struggles with the smaller toy lines for Transformers is, how do we get Soundwave cassettes out? That's basically what they ended up existing for eventually across the board. Titans Return continued these versions of the Legends and then incorporated them into the play pattern, unlike unlike some of the previous ones. So, in this iteration, yeah, they fit nicely into the vehicles. Have like compartments for the Titan Masters fit into, which, okay, that's a good way of incorporating them into the line. It does mean everyone ends up with a hollow box for a chest, but thankfully most of these were mini bots and they didn't really have a whole lot going for them at the time. So this is where we have to start saying goodbye again. So the last line that contained anything now called Legends was Power of the Primes. So during Combiner Wars, the line was not only doing, some classic major characters, but also giving you the ancillary characters for combiner sets. So like Blackjack that fit into your Metasaur's chest, he was a Legends class figure. Well, they continued that as much as they could for the Legends class in Power of the Primes, but you could really tell it was winding down. A lot of the line was made up of retools and repaints. Very few brand new molds. Even one of the brand new molds got a repaint within the same line, because Abominus had Cindersaur repainted from Slash here. Now, it didn't go out on a whimper. It went out on one of the more clever toys we ever got. So the idea of doing a brand new Battle Trap out of two figures who have individual robot modes is crazy. To do it at the Legend scale was crazy. But they pulled it off, and it's fantastic. And I think it went so well, everyone's upset that it didn't get the same treatment for, like, Flywheels. Like, this was such a cool set of figures. Really, really clever. Really well delivered. Genuinely one of the best. And it left Legends off on a really high note, weirdly enough, in spite of all the repaints and retools that were just kind of dragging it across the finish line just to get it to the end of the Prime Wars trilogy. We do have this like shining little light. And that's basically where the Legends class ends. You see how much it shuffled and evolved in order to continue throughout all these Transformers lines, from Legends all the way to Power of the Primes, or Classics to Power of the Primes. Every figure after that was just small figures for the sake of just having small figures around, but there's a noticeable lack of quality. Obviously, none of them have a good size or play value the way that the later Legends had, and they didn't have the affordability of the original Legends class figures. So you were left with these toys that just kind of felt tacked into the line for the sake of just having it, So it was kind of a letdown overall, just to kind of see that they took away something that I thought was vital. By the time we got out of the Micromasters, the Prime Masters, the whatever Masters, we eventually got to Core Class, which by this point doesn't really feel the way Legends felt in any way. And they didn't even pretend that this was some kind of continuation of Legends. But with this was the last gasp of small Generations quality Transformers at the store shelves. And once again, we're now missing that piece that I said was vital. the entry point, that thing that convinces you that this toy line is worth investing in with only spending a little bit of your hard-earned money. We don't have that right now, and I think it's sorely lacking in Transformers in general, because honestly, the kid budgeted stuff for the cartoon lines and the Transformers 1, for instance, that ain't cutting it. It ain't cutting it. So, that's the look back. Legends is fascinating in that it continued through so many different lines too. Like, it has a way of evolving the way that Deluxes and Voyagers never had to. It's almost like, I don't know, it almost is like a microcosm of the Transformer line itself, always trying to adapt and evolve into what it needed to be in order to continue. I wish we would do that more often these days, and I kind of wish we had these back. I wouldn't mind picking up pocket-sized Transformers again. But that's going to be it for me. That's your history lesson for the day. Let me know what your favorite Legends class toy is in the comments below, because odds are, if you were a Transformer fan from, between the mid-2000s all the way into 2020, odds are you got a few of these at some point. So let me know what your favorite one was in the comments below, and that'll do it for me today. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you next time.
Hello everyone, I am Astral Agent Magnetar, a Tokusatsu VTuber, and I am streaming 4 times a week over on Twitch, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday afternoons, and a special late night one on late Friday/early Saturday. So come watch, come hang out, and let's make an impact together.